We all know how the United States built the first nuclear bomb, but that was just the spark. Today, 10 nations possess nukes, each born from a mix of secrecy, espionage, and rivalry. Every country's path is as dramatic as the Manhattan Project, yet most stories remain untold. It all began in 1938, when German scientists split the atom, unlocking a force unlike anything before. A year later, Einstein warned America, if the Nazis weaponized this power, the world would never be the same. That warning set off the greatest scientific race in history, one that would define global power for the next century. Welcome back to SkyJet Wings. Number 1, United States. The United States was the first to unlock the atom's terrifying power. In the shadows of World War II, scientists from the US, UK, and Canada joined forces in what became the Manhattan Project, one of the most secret and expensive operations in history, consuming nearly 1% of America's GDP. They raced against Germany, fearing Hitler's scientists were close to the same discovery. But by the time Germany surrendered in May 1945, the Americans had already pulled far ahead. Just weeks later, during the Potsdam Conference, President Truman received the secret message: the Trinity test in New Mexico had succeeded. Humanity now held the power to destroy itself. Truman subtly told Stalin about the new weapon, unaware that Stalin already had spies inside the Manhattan Project and was quietly furious at being beaten. Then, in August 1945, the US dropped Little Boy and Fat Man on Japan, ending one war but beginning another, the global race for nuclear dominance. Number 2, Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was the second nation to master nuclear weapons. Their program began quietly in 1941, triggered by the sudden silence of German, British, and American scientists on nuclear research, a clear sign that others were racing toward a weapon. The urgency skyrocketed after the US dropped bombs on Japan. While Soviet spies had stolen key American secrets, leaders feared double agents and misinformation, so they didn't blindly trust the designs. Instead, they built their own program, blending stolen intel with original research and help from captured German scientists. By 1949, the Soviets successfully detonated the RDS-1 in Kazakhstan, shattering the US monopoly and igniting the Cold War nuclear arms race, where stockpiling nukes became the ultimate measure of power. Number 3, United Kingdom. The United Kingdom might have expected the US to share nuclear secrets. After all, they were wartime allies. But history had other plans. Before America even built its bomb, Britain had laid the groundwork with Project Tube Alloys in 1940, aided by German, Austrian, and Polish scientists fleeing Nazi Europe. With resources stretched by World War II, Britain handed over its research to the US, merging it into the Manhattan Project under the Quebec Agreement, which promised mutual sharing. Yet in 1945, after America tested and used its bombs, the US broke the agreement, keeping the final results secret. This betrayal pushed Britain to resume its own nuclear program, quickly leveraging their prior work and control over uranium supplies. By 1952, the UK successfully detonated its first nuclear bomb, Operation Hurricane, off the Montebello Islands, proving it could stand as a global nuclear power. Number 4. France had a head start. Several of its scientists had already contributed to the Manhattan Project. After World War II, France began its own nuclear program, initially focusing on energy, sometimes collaborating with Israel. But global events, the Suez Crisis, and rising tensions between the US and the Soviet Union pushed France to seek a nuclear deterrent to secure its place as a major European power. Unlike Britain, the US opposed France developing nukes, fearing France's independent policy. So France pursued the program almost entirely on its own. President Charles de Gaulle championed the effort, insisting nuclear weapons were vital for sovereignty and strategic independence from NATO. With uranium sourced from colonies in Niger, Gabon, and Madagascar, French scientists worked tirelessly despite post-war challenges. In 1960, France detonated its first atomic bomb, Gerboise Blue, in the Algerian Sahara, and by 1968, it successfully tested its first hydrogen bomb. Number 5. China. China became determined to develop nuclear weapons as a deterrent against the US. Initially, they received significant support from the Soviet Union, but the relationship soured when Khrushchev's cautious policies clashed with Mao's vision of a bold, independent communist power. When the Soviets withdrew all assistance, China pressed on alone, facing the immense challenges of the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. They poured massive resources into the program and leveraged newly discovered uranium deposits. By 1964, China successfully detonated its first atomic bomb, Project 596. Amazingly, just 32 months later, they tested their first hydrogen bomb, the fastest transition from fission to fusion in history, cementing China as a nuclear power to be reckoned with. Number 6. Israel. Israel is unique. It has never officially acknowledged possessing nuclear weapons, keeping the world guessing about when or how many were made. Starting in the 1950s, Israel collaborated with France on nuclear energy, building a secret facility in the Negev desert. By 1963, President Kennedy grew concerned about a weapons program and demanded U.S. inspections. Israel stalled, allowing only carefully staged checks while secretly developing weapons underground. Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion was reportedly obsessed with nuclear capability, creating tension with the U.S. at the time. The program is believed to have reached fruition around 1967, but speculation persisted for decades. The truth came to light in 1986 when technician Mordecai Vanunu leaked detailed photos and documents to the press, revealing Israel's nuclear activities. Vanunu was subsequently kidnapped by Mossad, tried in secret, and imprisoned, highlighting the extreme secrecy Israel maintains even today. Leaked evidence also suggests that Israel may have developed thermonuclear weapons, though the details remain classified. Number 7. India. India became the 7th country to enter the nuclear club, driven by deterrence against China and Pakistan. Nuclear research began in the 1940s, but progress was slow until the 1962 border war with China spurred acceleration. India initially focused on civilian nuclear energy, sourcing materials from countries like Canada and the US while secretly exploring weapons development. In 1974, India conducted its first nuclear test, Smiling Buddha, in the deserts of Rajasthan, officially called a peaceful nuclear explosion. The test drew global condemnation and sanctions, partly because India had used a Canadian-supplied reactor and refused to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. India deliberately delayed full weaponization, keeping its capabilities mostly theoretical until the 1990s, balancing international pressure with national security concerns. Number 8. South Africa. South Africa's nuclear story is truly unique. Blessed with some of the world's largest uranium reserves, it initially supplied material to the US, UK, France, and possibly Israel, mostly for energy, but likely also for weapons. Starting a nuclear energy program in 1948, South Africa shifted toward weapons in the 1960s-70s, driven by Soviet influence in Namibia and Angola and international isolation due to apartheid. By 1977, they built a testing facility in the Kalahari Desert, nearly detonating a bomb, halted only by international detection and pressure. In 1979, a mysterious double flash over the Prince Edward Islands, the V incident, hinted at a joint nuclear test with Israel, giving South Africa vital research. By the mid-1980s, South Africa had 6 nuclear bombs, similar in size to Hiroshima. Yet, like Israel, it maintained deliberate ambiguity. With the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of apartheid approaching, South Africa became the first nation to voluntarily dismantle its nuclear arsenal, destroying designs and securing uranium. Even today, concerns linger about the safety of these materials. Number 9. Pakistan. Pakistan began its nuclear journey in the 1970s, driven by rivalry with India. After losing the 1971 war that created Bangladesh, Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto vowed, "If India builds the bomb, Pakistan will eat grass to get one too." Following India's Smiling Buddha test in 1974, Pakistan accelerated its program. Abdul Qadir Khan, working in the Netherlands, stole top-secret uranium enrichment designs, forming the backbone of Pakistan's nuclear weapons effort. China also provided expertise, materials, and blueprints, seeing Pakistan as a counterweight to India. The U.S., prioritizing Pakistan as an ally against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, largely turned a blind eye, despite evidence of weapons development. By 1998, following India's nuclear tests, Pakistan conducted its first nuclear detonation in the Rasco Mountains, officially joining the nuclear club. India follows a no-first-use policy, reserving nukes for retaliation. Pakistan, however, maintains a first-use policy, signaling readiness to strike preemptively, a strategy that has deterred India in conventional conflicts. Abdul Qadir Khan later admitted to selling nuclear technology to North Korea, Iran, and Libya, raising global concerns about proliferation and uncontrolled nuclear spread. Number 10. North Korea. North Korea became the 10th and final nuclear nation so far. Founder Kim Il-sung viewed nuclear weapons as essential for regime survival and to deter rivals like South Korea and the U.S. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union helped establish North Korea's first nuclear research facilities for peaceful energy, training many scientists. China and the Soviets, however, refused to assist with weapons. By the 1970s, North Korea relied on its large domestic uranium deposits to build an independent program. Despite signing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in the 1990s, they secretly continued weapons development and delayed inspections. A 1994 deal with the U.S. to build light water reactors collapsed by 2002, leading North Korea to withdraw from the treaty. They received limited help from China and crucial assistance from Pakistan. By 2006, North Korea conducted its first nuclear test, though small. Subsequent tests in 2009, 2013, 2016, and 2017 included its first thermonuclear weapons, signaling its rise as a fully fledged nuclear power. By 1949, the nuclear race was accelerating faster than anyone expected. The U.S. immediately turned its attention to a new class of weapons, thermonuclear bombs. Unlike the first atomic bombs, which split atoms, fission, these new bombs fused atoms together, fusion, the same process that powers stars. The result? Weapons hundreds of times more powerful than those dropped on Japan. Scientists, including Oppenheimer, warned of the extreme danger humanity now faced. But President Truman pressed forward. In 1952, The US tested Ivy Mike, the first hydrogen bomb, unleashing a force 450 times more powerful than Nagasaki. The Soviets followed in 1955 with RDS-37, and the UK in 1957 with Operation Grapple. The emergence of these superweapons reshaped global politics, prompting the US to renew nuclear agreements with the UK and pushing other nations, like France, to accelerate their own programs. By 1949, the nuclear race was accelerating faster than anyone expected. The US immediately turned its attention to a new class of weapons, thermonuclear bombs. Unlike the first atomic bombs, which split atoms, fission, these new bombs fused atoms together, fusion, the same process that powers stars. The result? Weapons hundreds of times more powerful than those dropped on Japan. Scientists, including Oppenheimer, warned of the extreme danger humanity now faced. But President Truman pressed forward. In 1952, the US tested Ivy Mike, the first hydrogen bomb, unleashing a force 450 times more powerful than Nagasaki. The Soviets followed in 1955 with RDS-37, and the UK in 1957 with Operation Grapple. The emergence of these superweapons reshaped global politics, prompting the US to renew nuclear agreements with the UK and pushing other nations, like France, to accelerate their own programs. Some countries came very close to developing nuclear weapons but chose another path. Argentina and Brazil built the infrastructure and technology, yet Latin America largely committed to nuclear-free status under the Treaty of Tlatelolco, proposed by Mexico. All countries signed, except French Guiana, which remains under France, a nuclear-armed state, though no weapons are stationed there. Similar treaties exist worldwide. Rarotonga Treaty, South Pacific; Pelindaba Treaty, Africa; Semipalatinsk Treaty, Central Asia; Bangkok Treaty, Southeast Asia; Antarctic Treaty bans all military activity. Yet secrecy has limits. Most nuclear-armed states now store weapons in submarines, roaming the oceans undetected. This ensures a second strike capability. Even if a country's land-based facilities are destroyed, these hidden submarines guarantee retaliation. Creating nuclear weapons is extremely expensive and hard to hide. The 1979 V incident in the Indian Ocean, a small nuclear test picked up by satellites, proves even back then stealth was nearly impossible. With today's satellite surveillance, even sunken or submersible tests can be detected. So while only 10 nations have fully completed nuclear weapons programs, it's likely only a matter of time before more join the list. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden history of nuclear weapons and the global arms race, hit that like button, subscribe to SkyJet Wings, and ring the bell to stay updated on our latest aviation and defense insights. Drop a comment below. Which country's nuclear story surprised you the most?